Hey everyone. For those of us who used to be in churchianity, I'm sure we can remember hearing our preacher stand up there telling us we don't have to keep that old law of Moses anymore. And today we look back and we wonder, how did we ever believe that? It seems so absurd to us now. But is there anything that we're still being told today that we don't have to do anymore? There certainly is, and let's talk about it. Shalom everybody, and welcome to Beit Tefillah. As most of us know, the Torah is a covenant. You can't pick and choose what you want to do. The covenant is a contract, is a ketubah, which means an alliance of marriage. We're rehearsing to be the bride. We have to obey everything Elohim said. We can't pick and choose what we want to keep or not. So, are most of those who claim to be in covenant and Torah observant today, are they failing in at least one point? Yes, they most certainly are. And the sad fact is, most Torah teachers are leading them to do so. My prayers are that you would hear me out in this video and make sure you are fully in covenant and not failing in one point. You know, my videos are short. They're not very long, 10-15 minutes. So please just hear me out and pray about it. That's all I ask. Typically, I don't like to date my videos, but I'm going to do so with this one as it's important. When I'm sitting here filming this video, the date today is March 29th, 2017, and we're celebrating the new year today as a crescent moon was sighted last night after sunset by many witnesses. It was hard to see. We didn't see it ourselves. We went up the mountain to try to look for it, but it was really cloudy up there. I don't think we would have saw the moon even if it was full due to the cloud cover. But I saw a lot of pictures of the crescent moon, even though it was a thin sliver. If you saw it, you saw it. It was there, okay? However, we are excited about this new moon and this new year, especially as we just accomplished something commanded by Elohim of those who consider themselves to be in covenant. And what did we accomplish? Keeping the shmita for the entire year. Now I imagine at this point that many are going to roll their eyes and shut off this video, but before you do, let me remind you that the shmita is a Torah commandment. It's not a suggestion, it's not optional, it's part of the covenant. Some Torah teachers are probably going to roll their eyes and say, that's only for those who live in the land of Israel. So let me get this straight. We know Elohim's people were kicked out of the land of Israel for 490 years for not letting the land rest. And people think that they're going to be able to get in the new promised land at the end of time by disregarding it. Is that their way of thinking? They better examine their logic. Now it is written that you shall not whore out your daughters. That is written after it states something else, but let's read the whoring out part first. Leviticus 19:29, do not profane your daughter by making her out to be a whore so that the land does not whore and the land become filled with wickedness. Okay, a few verses earlier we are told, Leviticus 19:23, and when you come into the land... Well, hey, since a lot of us and most of us do not live in the physical land of Israel anymore, for those of us who do not, can we disregard that commandment and whore out our daughters now? Of course not. But by the logic of some Torah teachers, we can. Let's see what else we can avoid that comes right after that verse of when you come into the land. We'll cover just a few. Leviticus 19:26. Do not eat meat with the blood. Do not practice divination or magic. 19:28. And do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. 19:30. Guard my Sabbaths. Leviticus 19:31. Do not turn to mediums and do not seek after spiritists and be defiled by them. So using this faulty logic that some people use, that means it's just fine and dandy that we consume blood, practice magic or divination, tattoo ourselves, we can disregard the Sabbath and go see spiritists and mediums. Because after all, we're not in the land of Israel, right? So why did Elohim say, when you come into the land then? Let's pause and remember that this was all of Israel. Traveling as one group, they were in the wilderness and they had no land to call their own yet. They were still moving in the wilderness. We know the Torah is a covenant. It's a contract. We already talked about it. It's a ketubah, means alliance of marriage. Let's say a husband broke his marriage contract and he cheated on his wife with 30 different women. And he went to her, said he was sorry and he repented, but he said, you know what? I'm going to get rid of 29 of them. I'm still going to keep one of them. How do you think she feel about that? Would that be cool with her? No. I hope not. Elohim said, if you repent and do all that I command you today, not some of it, not most of it, well, guess what? The shmita is part of all of it. Deuteronomy 30, 1 through 3. I read this a lot, and there's a reason for it. And it shall be, when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among the Gentiles, where Yahuwah your Elohim drives you. And you shall turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim and obey his voice, according to all that I command you today. With all your heart, with all your being, you and your children, then Yahuwah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the people where Yahuwah your Elohim has scattered you. Now, in reviewing that, does that tell us we bring these words back to our heart only if we live in the land of Israel? Or does that tell us that we bring these words back to our heart wherever we have been driven, wherever we have been scattered among the Gentiles? Let me ask you this. Are we in the dispersion still, or are we not? And does it say if we obey some of what Elohim said, or does it say most of what he commanded, or does it say all? And does it say when we obey all that we think we have to do today, or does it say all that Elohim commanded us back then on that day? Newsflash, the shmita was part of what was commanded back then on that day. Just a few verses later, we read this, Deuteronomy 31, 10-12. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of booths, when all of Israel comes to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim in the place where he chooses, read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and the women, the little ones, and your sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear, and so that they learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim, and guard to do all the words of this Torah. Just said the year of the release. The word release is Strong's H8059, which is the Hebrew word shmita. The shmita was part of all that Elohim said we were to do if we want to be considered his people. Let me also remind others of this. Deuteronomy 4:2, do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I am commanding you. So if you're teaching that you don't have to do this now because you're not in the physical land of Israel, well, now you're breaking two commands because you're telling people wrong and you're not obeying it yourself. All of these feasts, all the Moedim of Elohim are holy convocations, which means they are set-apart rehearsals. The Shemitah is part of that, as Elohim wants to make sure that his people would also take care of the new earth, or the new promised land, when those who are his will inherit it. So, should we not be rehearsing right now as well to be good stewards of that land, if we hope to inherit it? Do you see why it's so horrific that some Torah teachers are teaching against keeping the Shemitah? This is just basic stuff. I mean, really, you either obey the Torah or you don't. You know, more and more people are waking up to the truth that there is one covenant for those of us who wish to be considered his people. It's written quite a few times, there is one law for the stranger and the foreign-born. There's not different laws for different people living in different areas. He's not a respecter of people. He's not going to have different laws for people living over here and different laws for people over here. No. If you're a parent and you have kids of the same age, you're not going to have different rules for your kids. They're all going to have to obey the rules of your household. Okay? Does the land need to obey anything? Can the land itself sin? Is the Creator coming back to pick up a chunk of real estate, or a people who are his that are obedient and walking in accordance to his word that are scattered across the whole face of the earth? Guess what? That Shemitah is part of the covenant and it's a command. It's not optional. There's no wiggling out of it. We can't say we don't do that because we don't live there. That's just as lame as saying we don't have to keep that law of Moses anymore like they do in the Christian churches. Let me stop and say something here. The Shemitah cycle was lost for a very long time, and recently, and I mean within the last 10, 20 years or whatever, we were able to get the Shemitah cycle back, and other people have written about this and proved it out very well. They've talked about how they've arrived at it from different dates on different tombs or whatever, and I'm not going to go into that in this video, okay, or how they arrived at what year, but this is something that we need to do in Elohim's time. We need to keep it in his time frame. Like, we just can't pick a day of the week we want to keep for our Shabbat. We have to keep the seventh day, just like he commanded, right? So we want to get in on that perfect 7-year cycle, and it's been rediscovered. So if you decide to keep the Shemitah year from the time I'm making this video, you have another 5 years before you even have to start preparing for it. And then you get a whole year to prepare, and then the year following that, so 6 years from now, we're going to be in the next Shemitah. So you don't have to do anything now. Just pray about it, research it, and think it over. That's all I'm saying. We are told to gather in the 6th year, and Elohim will provide us with a double portion. Let me tell you, He certainly does. That I can tell you from experience. The blessings we received from the shmita were wonderful. It was one of the best years of our lives, and while we're sad to see it end, we're grateful to have accomplished it and to be given the opportunity to obey Elohim as we're being restored to his covenant. The shmita is a little bit hard to talk about unless you've actually done it. There's a psychological thing to it. There's a physical thing to it, of course, and what you can eat. Some people have a hard time, thinking about what I'm going to eat for a week out, let alone for a whole year. And you only want to stock up what you eat. You're not going to stock up, if you don't eat spinach, you're not going to put 40 cans of spinach in your pantry. You know what I mean? So I've had some people ask if when the next one draws near that I'd come and talk to their groups and explain what we did and how we kept it. Because there's a lot of stuff you don't think about. And I'm going to be happy to do that. But like I said, we have 5 years before we have to worry about preparing it. So there's nothing that has to be done right now. People just need to be convicted that yes, we have to obey all that Elohim said. And that's the most crucial thing, is that we still have Torah teachers or rabbis out there telling people, no, we don't have to do that. We don't live in the land anymore. That's horrible. Now, I'm going to make more videos about this as the time is drawing closer, Yah willing, and we'll talk about that, a little bit more in the years to come. But I just want to say there's been quite a few people the last month or two that are waking up and realizing, no, we do need to start keeping the shmita, and they felt pretty bad because they weren't able to participate in this one. But it's like, say if all of a sudden you were convicted to keep the Sabbath when you just got done working that Sabbath. Well, obviously you can't keep that Sabbath because you've already worked on it, but you can keep the next one. So let's start learning about it. Let's start, thinking about what we're going to do in preparation for keeping the one that starts 6 years from right now. My wife and I kept it, as did our son and his wife, and I can tell you that we lacked for nothing during the shmita. We got healthier. We have been so richly blessed. We keep it from the springtime to the springtime, just like we're told in Scripture. We don't keep it from autumn to autumn, like popular authors write about, or as some tradition will dictate to you. No, we do it as Elohim told us, from the spring to spring, just as the years go, right? You keep it during that year. All I ask for those who are watching this video is ask yourselves, do you want to be fully in covenant with Elohim? If we keep the Sabbath and rest every week where we live in the dispersion, isn't it kind of a no-brainer that we would also let our land rest as well? We don't want to default in one single point. Any of those teachers telling you you don't have to keep the shmita unless you live over there in that physical land of Israel, they're still regurgitating some of that same bad doctrine that's coming out of their mouth that they learned in churchianity or some kind of tradition when they said, you don't have to do that anymore. That's a bunch of baloney. The shmita is a commandment, and it's not optional, and we're to do it wherever we have been scattered. For those people who are truly seeking the truth and their desire is to obey Elohim, this commandment can no longer be ignored. People need to start talking about it. Other people, if you're keeping it, you need to start telling other people. More people need to be made aware of it. This is something we have to all do to come fully into covenant. Okay? Time is short. We need to prepare for it. We need to think about it. We need to have more discussions about it. We need to realize this is something we are commanded to do while we are in the dispersion. Deuteronomy 30, 1 through 3. Read it again. We're to do all that he said back on that day, wherever we have been scattered around the face of the earth. Then he will gather us, if we do all that he said. Well, I hope this video blessed you. For a little more research into this, in this book, The Shmita and How We Prepared for It, I wrote this one about 1.5 years ago about how we prepared for the Shmita that we just completed. It's a rather thin book. It's got a lot of the scripture that I covered in this video and a lot more. It's got a lot of tips about preserving food and dehydrating and putting it up, and it's got a little bit of the psychological aspect and some of the physical stuff, what you can buy during the Shmita and what you can't, things like that. So you may want to get that. They're all free, BeitTefillahProductions.org. We're not trying to sell anything. We don't want your money. We just want to teach the truth. That's all we're trying to do here. So thanks to everyone who is sharing the truth, everyone who is sharing these videos, everyone who is forwarding them and liking them and leaving comments. We sure appreciate that. If you haven't subbed to our channel, please do so. We appreciate that as well. Shalom to everyone scattered worldwide in the greater dispersion, everyone who is in obedience, everyone who is covenant, all of our brothers and sisters all around the world. Shalom from all of us here at Beit Tefillah Productions. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful day.